Hello, my name is Hanvey, and these are my Viva questions for Unit 11. So, for the starter questions, the first starter question is, what is it about? My essay is about how Meyerhold's techniques are undervalued in the modern day when compared to the techniques and formula of Stanislavski. Next question on the starters, what did you do? Well, I did a lot of contrast between Stanislavski and Meyerhold in order to make each point that I needed to make. Alongside backing that up with quotes, yeah, those are the main aspects of what I did. A lot of compare and contrast in order to prove why, why the purpose of the essay was what it was. Yeah, and that was very clear. I just used a lot of compare and contrast to sort of show why Meyerhold's techniques are undervalued in the modern day compared to Stanislavski. The next start question, what did you find? I found several different acting techniques and loads of different new ways of acting, and mainly physical acting that I learned from the research that I gathered. And yeah, it was really interesting to gather that. And why does that matter? That matters because those techniques, all that knowledge, not only does it pile onto my own knowledge, but I can also use those techniques in future performances or future productions, anything like that, depending on the style of it. And yeah, all of it is just going to become very useful for me because, it can just add on to my versatility as an actor. Those are the starter questions done with. Now we'll get to the real questions. Question 1, why did you decide on these particular practitioners? I used Stanislavski because I have a significant amount of knowledge on him, but also I admire Stanislavski the most out of any other practitioner. But I was also very curious about Meyerhold's methods because although I had some knowledge about them, I didn't know a lot, so it was kind of a learning process for me as it was for the reader of the essay. So yeah, that was the main reason I decided on both of them, because also they're also two very big contrasting things. Because obviously Stanislavski focuses on naturalism and the creating of character to tell a story, whereas Meyerhold focuses on the more physical aspects, such as gestures to tell a story, things like that. But yeah, question 2, what have you found the most interesting aspect of your research on the practitioners? Again, just discovering different acting techniques that I never ever knew about, the more basic ones are just analysing different gestures that you can use to tell possible secrets about your character that the audience needs to pick up on. It's, underlying themes within your physical movements, things like that. But the research that I gathered went a lot more into depth with that and gave it a lot more reason. And it was really interesting to learn about. And yeah, I'm glad that I went through that process myself. I taught myself that. I went through and looked for that stuff myself, and it was just a big, massive upside for me. So question 3, how did your thinking about this topic develop as you went through this research process? To begin with, as I mentioned, I had a very limited amount of information. I had a substantial amount of Stanislavski stuff, but not really enough, and I only knew the very basis of Meyerhold's formula and techniques. But as research progressed, at the beginning, I knew the points that I wanted to make, but I didn't know how to make them. But as research went on, it became a lot more clearer because it applied to my knowledge of different acting techniques, and it just became a lot more easier to attack those points in a certain way. Because I had information. I had a lot more information than I did to begin with. So yeah, that was the main one I looked at. Yeah, to be honest, that's the way it was. But question 4, now that you have completed the research, which part of the process would you say you enjoyed the most and why? Honestly, I enjoyed reading through. I researched quite a few websites, different. I think one was about multivillain and how Meyerhold's techniques and formula were very useful for that because, it helps you differentiate between different characters, create barriers or layers, if you will. But the main part that I enjoyed was, I'd have to say, reading through the journals that I picked up on online because I think some of them were written in 1979, 1978, things like that. But yeah, journals on Stanislavski and Meyerhold, you know, things that have been written about 30, 40 years ago. It's just so interesting to read through, you know, other people's journals and findings of these, you know, practitioners. And not only did it help me a lot in my essay and help me prove points, it also just, it was just so interesting, you know, because loads of things in there you couldn't find on a typical website, you know, you can only find in unique things like journals, things like that. So yeah, that was the main interesting bit for me. But what's it called? Sorry. Question 5, were there any surprises along the way? Yes, the main surprise was I thought I gathered enough information to fit perfectly, but as the essay was a minimum and maximum, I think, of 1,500 words, it had to be around that area. I ended up with 1,000 words and I had nothing else to talk about, so I clearly didn't research like as much as I should have, you know, because I thought I didn't want to research too much because I thought that I might have too much to talk about and I'd go over the limit. But if I could do that again, I would just research as much as I possibly could, whether I thought it was enough or not, because it doesn't matter really, you know, as long as I can make my points and say what I want to say, then it should be okay. So yeah, I would gather a lot more research if I was to go back to the beginning. But yeah, yeah, that was just the main surprise. Like, it was just the main big hiccup I'm hitting because, yeah, I just didn't have enough research and I should have done. So yeah. Question 6. You referred to, now this is weird, this because it has a gap in it, but I've put both gaps. So you referred to Meyerhold and Stanislavski as both key influences on your research. Can you summarise the particular relevance of their work? Stanislavski's work was very important and a big influence to my research and my essay overall, because I needed to use the techniques of Stanislavski to contrast with Meyerhold's techniques in order to show why I think, or why the essay is trying to show that Meyerhold's techniques are undervalued in the modern day. And yeah, Meyerhold's techniques and his work is also key because, you know, I need his work in order to say this was an audience, I need his work in order to say, hey, this work, you know, Meyerhold's work, you know, it's still really good stuff, it's just as good as Stanislavski, there is no reason as to why it shouldn't be used in the modern day. Things like that. Both of their work was relevant because I needed to contrast to both of them to make my points. But yeah, question 7. How did Meyerhold influence you in... I've only used one for this because only one is really viable. But yeah, how did Meyerhold influence you in the creating of your most recent performance piece? My most recent performance piece was Unit 9, and that was Theatre and Education. Now for this, there was a lot of multi-rolling involved, and there was a multi-rolling section within my essay that talks about Meyerhold's formula. And at this time, I didn't have a big, like, substantial amount of knowledge for Meyerhold, but I did have a basis. You know, I knew not a lot of his techniques revolved around analysing gestures and different ways of, you know, like hinting towards the audience, like secrets about your character. But yeah, I also used like things like layering, you know, like a lot of you know, just controlling my acting material, things like that. And I did that in order to differentiate between the different characters, you know. Yeah, just creating barriers between each character so that I knew who I was at the time and it was clear for me. But more importantly, it was clear for the audience. So yeah, I'd say Meyerhold's techniques had a big influence on that, 100%. But yeah, question 8. How do you think you may use the findings in your research to influence future practice? Depending on the style of production or theatre that it's actually focusing on, that the production is actually on. On future practice, obviously, if it's a more naturalistic piece, Stanislavski's, like, you know, material will be a lot more useful. And yeah, to be honest, yeah, and with Meyerhold, if it's a lot more, you know, yeah, I don't know the word. If it's a lot more to do with Meyerhold, you know, if it's more based on, you know, multi-rolling and, you know, physical acting, then I think those Meyerhold techniques, you know, acting with gestures, you know, analysing different possible ways of telling secrets about your character, that'll be the main influence towards more physical acting pieces. But Yeah, I think they'll both have a huge impact on any future practice that I may do, because not only does it apply to my knowledge, it's also applied to my versatility as an actor to be able to act in different ways. So I do think that will be massively beneficial for me. Question 9, did you encounter any problems with applying your methods to research? Yes, I did. So the problem I had to do with that was I had research, but there were times when I struggled to apply it to my actual essay to make the points that I wanted to make. And yeah, it was just trying to find the relevant information that could go into my actual piece, my actual essay. But yeah, that was the main thing that I really hit within that, with research issues. But yeah, after a while, once I'd done it a few times, it became more easy. It became a lot more easier, and the essay turned out for the best. So yeah. Question 10. Now, this question does confuse me slightly, but I'm going to answer it the way that I think it's supposed to be answered. So I'm going to read this word for word. It says, how did doing this research change you as a practitioner? Now, I know how it changed me. It did change me as an actor. But I'd say the main thing that this research changed, the main way this research changed me was it really opened up my mind to different ways of acting, because beforehand, before this research, I did not favour physical acting whatsoever, with gestures, things like that. I did not favour it at all. I just preferred Stanislavski. But I just really wasn't fond of physical acting. But after that point, as I said, it opened up my mind, and it really, made me understand, the values of physical acting, and it really, added on to my skills and my versatility as an actor. It really helped me develop those skills, and yeah, it's just changed me in a completely different way. Because say if someone, not anybody would, but say if somebody was to come for me for tips, or different ways of acting, instead of saying, oh, naturalism, all this, stuff that they're already familiar with, I can suggest other things such as Meyerhold's formula, things like that. That's the main thing that has changed for me. But yeah, the final question, question 11. If you were starting your research again now, are there any changes in the way you would plan it? The only aspect I would change would be hold on, let me read the question again. Yeah, so really, I with my research, as I said, I marked a specific point as to what I thought would be enough for my essay. But I think if I was doing it again, I'd just get rid of that point and just keep researching as much as possible. Because doing that, yes, it's a lot and you're not going to fit all of it into the essay, but that way I can see what's important, what's relevant to my essay, and what the best piece of research or information that I've gathered, what the best part of it can actually do for the essay, what point it's going to make, and yeah, pretty much how it's going to answer my question. And my question at the beginning of the essay, which was, in the modern day, the techniques of Meyerhold are completely undervalued when it's compared to the techniques of Stanislavski. Yeah, that was the question for it. But yeah, that would be my main thing. Just get rid of that mark on my research, and just don't mark the amount that I need. Just go over the amount that I need, so I have a lot more material, so I can choose from it. But yeah, those are my Viva questions for Unit 11 and Unit 9. So yeah, thank you for watching, and yeah, goodbye.